Hear that? That is the agonizing sound of thousands of hard-earned dollars and countless hours of grueling labor, instantly turning into a useless, smoking pile of scrap metal. Welcome back to Heavy Machinery. Today, we are tearing into the agricultural scrap heap to expose the top 10 worst tractors ever built. Machines cursed with catastrophic, self-destructing engine designs. These are fatal engineering flaws. They force these beasts to literally tear themselves apart. Hit that subscribe button, and let's dig into the mechanical carnage. Number 1 on our list takes us back to the dawn of mechanized farming, where the marketing promised a revolution, but the reality delivered a boiling nightmare: the Fordson Model F. If your grandfather wrenched on one of these back in the 1920s, he probably had the severe burn scars to prove it. Henry Ford wanted a tractor that was cheap, light, and incredibly simple. But in their aggressive quest to cut production costs, engineers made a fatal omission. They completely left out a water pump. Instead of a pump, they relied on a passive thermosiphon cooling system. Here is the root cause of the disaster. In a small stationary engine, thermosiphon works fine. However, strap that engine to a heavy steel plow in a sun-baked field hitting 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and basic physics becomes your worst enemy. The engine generated massive heat, far faster than the passive system could circulate it. The coolant would literally boil inside the water jacket, turning the engine block into a high-pressure steam kettle. The catastrophic symptoms started with a sickening hiss, followed by a geyser of boiling water erupting from the radiator cap. If you pushed it hard to finish a furrow, that heavy cast iron block would superheat. The oil viscosity broke down to the consistency of water. The metal pistons expanded way beyond their tight factory tolerances. And then, bang! The engine would seize solid, locking the rear wheels instantly. It was a poorly designed machine that literally cooked itself to death right before the lunch break. Coming in at number 2 is a machine that broke the hearts of many loyal green and yellow fans: the John Deere 2010. Introduced in the early 1960s, the shiny marketing brochures showcased a sleek, modern, 4-cylinder agricultural marvel. But out in the heavy clay soil of the American Midwest, this 4,500-pound tractor quickly earned a brutal reputation. It became known as a mechanic's absolute worst nightmare, the fatal engineering flaw, hidden deep within its incredibly weak core. That flaw was a notoriously terrible sleeved engine design. Instead of using traditional wet or dry cylinder sleeves, securely fitted deep into the cast iron block like a normal heavy-duty diesel, John Deere used a bizarre top-deck plate system. It was an incredibly fragile, vastly overcomplicated solution to a problem that simply did not exist. Under the massive strain of a heavy draft load, the uneven thermal expansion of those sleeves against that rigid plate created absolute chaos. You would suddenly notice a very sweet smell of burning coolant, and then thick white smoke would pour out the exhaust stack. The engine blew head gaskets with a regularity that was maddening. Even worse, the constantly compromised internal seals broke down. Gallons of engine coolant poured directly down into the oil pan. Your vital engine lubrication quickly turned into a thick, frothy sludge, wiping out the main bearings. It turned a brand new tractor into an incredibly expensive, perfectly painted, motionless lawn ornament sitting in the yard. Number 3 brings us to a legendary 4-wheel drive beast. It proves that sometimes possessing too much raw power is exactly what kills you. The John Deere 8020. This massive, articulated giant. Weighing over 20,000 pounds, it was an absolute mechanical marvel. However, it housed a dark secret, a highly destructive secret, hiding right under its massive hood. That secret was the screaming, infamous Detroit Diesel 6-71 engine. It was an engine originally designed to power heavy tanks and massive marine vessels, a machine built for war. The 671 Asha was an absolute two-stroke screamer. It produced massive, brutal amounts of power, but it did so with a violent fury, wildly unbalanced to the point of madness. Unlike a smooth-running, traditional four-stroke agricultural diesel, every single downstroke on this two-stroke Detroit engine was an explosive power stroke. The sheer concussive force and extreme high-frequency vibration generated by this howling power plant were completely mismatched. It was entirely too rough for the rigid, unforgiving steel chassis of a standard agricultural farm tractor. The horrifying result was, the engine literally shook the entire tractor to pieces. The high RPM harmonic vibrations relentlessly worked their way through the massive chassis, vibrating heavy bolts completely loose. It cracked factory structural welds and tore up the heavy driveline from the inside out. You could easily hear an 8020 screaming from 3 miles away, but what you could not see were the massive transmission gears and steel universal joints being systematically beaten to absolute death by that engine. Number 4 is the heavy tractor that nearly bankrupted hardworking farmers across America, the Ford 6000 Commander. Widely and mockingly known as the 6000, this poorly executed machine was aggressively pushed out of the factory doors. Long before it was mechanically ready, Ford desperately wanted to dominate the heavy agricultural market with brand new, cutting-edge technology. But instead of delivering a reliable workhorse, they delivered a 65-horsepower mechanical hand grenade with the safety pin already pulled right out of the factory. The real villain of this mechanical disaster is actually what the transmission constantly did to the fragile engine. The 6000 was proudly equipped with the highly complex Selecto-Speed transmission. This was a planetary gear system, theoretically designed to allow shifting on the fly without using a heavy foot clutch. In reality, the erratic, incredibly jerky shifting created violent mechanical shock waves. These heavy shock waves traveled straight up the driveline, past the heavy steel flywheel, and directly into the heart of the engine block. Imagine taking a heavy 20-pound steel sledgehammer and brutally hitting the engine's main crankshaft every single time you changed a gear. These heavy concussive shock waves caused absolutely devastating internal failures. Thick steel crankshafts violently snapped in half. Heavy iron main bearing caps cracked wide open, and the main cast iron block itself structurally fractured. Desperate farmers would attempt to shift gears under a heavy dirt load and be immediately greeted with a catastrophic clunk, followed by hot black oil rapidly draining directly into the dry soil. Number 5 brings us to a massive European heavyweight that simply could not handle its own fast heartbeat, the Massey Ferguson 1085, powered by the incredibly popular Perkins 4.318 engine. This 10,000-pound tractor, on paper, certainly looked like a highly reliable iron workhorse. Perkins engines are generally legendary worldwide for their rugged durability. However, something went terribly wrong with the critical internal geometry and the structural balancing of that specific engine when bolted into this particular tractor frame. The dangerous core issue hiding inside was a very severe harmonic balancing defect. As the 4-cylinder engine confidently reached its peak operating RPM, which was typically right in the sweet spot for heavy plowing operations, it suddenly produced a very deep, highly destructive internal engine vibration. This was not just a normal mechanical rattle. This was a powerful, unseen, resonant frequency. It actively and violently attacked the engine's internal steel components, putting extreme mechanical stress on rotating parts that were never designed for it. If you foolishly push the 1085 to perform continuous, heavy draft load work, the unseen vibrations quickly became fully lethal. The factory harmonic balancer simply could not dampen the aggressive shock. It directly led to heavily cracked steel crankshafts and violently shattered internal oil pump drives. You would feel a strange, creeping numbness in your thick leather work boots from the vibrating floorboards. and merely moments later, the entire engine would violently lock up solid. Drop a comment if you ever felt that horrible vibration. Number 6 brings us to a massively popular machine, the Fiat 180-90 Turbo. Now wait just a minute. The Fiat 180-90 is known globally as a legendary, absolutely bulletproof heavy tractor, right? Exactly. And that massive, well-earned reputation for indestructible power was ironically its ultimate downfall, because the huge 8.1-liter engine was physically so strong, aggressive operators arrogantly treated it like it was completely invincible. Right out in the vast, wide-open American farm fields, during the planting season, hungry for more power, farmers intentionally cranked up the heavy turbo boost far past the safe factory specifications to squeeze out massive amounts of extra horsepower. But they did this without ever upgrading the original factory cooling system. The brilliant Italian engineers meticulously designed that heavy cast iron block to operate safely within very specific thermal limits. When reckless farmers forcefully pushed the manifold boost pressure straight into the stratosphere, the internal thermal stress became absolutely astronomical, far exceeding the design capacity of the engine's original water pump. The standard factory water pump simply could not push enough cold liquid coolant to keep up with the extreme aftermarket heat generated by the massive turbocharger. The immense internal thermal pressure caused highly localized, dangerous boiling deep inside the engine block. This intense heat violently warped the heavy steel cylinder heads like cheap potato chips and cracked them right between the exhaust valves. If you have ever pulled a ruined head off an illegally overboosted tractor engine, please let me know your pain down in the comments. Number 7 is a huge, commanding blue giant, infected with a completely fatal, perfectly invisible internal disease, the Ford TW35. Lurking deep inside its massive, heavy-duty BSD series engine block was a highly destructive, incredibly silent killer, known to mechanics as cavitation. It was not a massive sudden explosion that destroyed this heavy tractor. Instead, it was a painfully slow, mechanical death, relentlessly agonizing from the inside out, completely hidden from the operator sitting inside the air-conditioned modern cab. Cavitation aggressively occurs when extreme high-frequency cylinder wall vibrations cause millions of microscopic vapor bubbles to form rapidly within the liquid coolant jacket. When these tiny bubbles suddenly collapse against the tough outside steel of the heavy cylinder liners, they explode inward with absolutely incredible force. Imagine a terrifying, invisible army of microscopic jackhammers relentlessly chipping away at the cast iron block. Over thousands of operating hours, these microscopic explosions violently pitted the hard metal until they successfully ate completely through the heavy cylinder walls. There was absolutely no mechanical warning sound. One beautifully sunny day, you are smoothly pulling a 20-foot disc across a 40-acre field, and the very next day, those hidden pinhole leaks silently dump gallons of green coolant directly into your hot oil pan. You pull the steel dipstick and suddenly find a forbidden, frothy milkshake of totally destroyed main bearings. Unless you religiously monitored your exact chemical supplemental coolant additives, this big blue tractor was absolutely guaranteed mathematically to slowly eat its very own engine block. Number 8 introduces the absolute nightmare of mixing early, unproven computer electronics with heavy iron. The bright orange Renault 155.54, powered by what was normally considered a very solid, highly reliable MWM-built diesel engine. It tragically fell victim to a massive plague of internal electronic sensor failures. Manufacturers in the late 80s and early 90s were enthusiastically just starting to forcefully cram delicate computers into heavy tractors, and those sensitive computers simply could not handle the extreme field dirt. The delicate electronic sensors would frequently short out violently, or constantly send dangerously false data readings back to the main engine computer. This incorrect data directly commanded the electronic fuel injectors to drastically and continually overfuel the hot engine. Now, a little bit of thick black smoke pouring out the exhaust stack might look cool at a weekend tractor pull, but continuous, extreme engine overfueling inevitably leads to a highly catastrophic internal condition, known amongst seasoned mechanics as severe cylinder washdown. The massive excess of unburnt raw liquid diesel fuel literally washed the vital protective film of slick, lubricating oil right off the heavy steel cylinder walls. Without that ultra-thin layer of lubricating oil, instantly you had pure, highly destructive metal on metal friction. The heavy metal piston rings violently burned up, internal engine compression rapidly vanished into thin air, and the powerful engine forcefully scored its own steel cylinders to death. Let me know if bad early computers ever ruined your expensive heavy farming equipment. Number 9 is the bizarre International Harvester 2+2, affectionately known across America as the Anteater or Snoopy. With its heavy engine mounted way out in front of the front steering axle, it was intelligently designed for perfect 50-50 weight distribution and unmatched pulling traction. But that incredibly bizarre physical layout intentionally created a highly lethal heavy geometry problem. Mathematically impossible. The massive torque powerfully generated by the huge inline-six diesel engine had a very long, violently twisted physical path to travel backwards. When you aggressively hooked the heavy Anteater to a huge soil implement and the 4 large tires finally hooked up solid to the hard dirt, the engine was essentially arm wrestling its own heavy rear end. The immense twisting force, the raw physical torque, had absolutely nowhere to go but straight directly into the center driveline. The incredibly long tractor chassis would literally visibly twist sideways under a massive field load. This terrible mechanical misalignment forcefully caused the heavy cast iron transfer cases to shatter completely. Massive steel U-joints violently snapped under the extreme pressure, like perfectly dry wooden twigs. It was not just rapidly wearing expensive replacement parts out over time. The engine's raw, unbridled torque power was actively and continuously twisting the massive tractor's very own steel spine, until something finally exploded outward, creating a highly dangerous shower of hot, thick gear oil and jagged steel shrapnel. It was a completely brilliant engineering concept that physically and mathematically destroyed its own driveline, right out in the muddy field. Finally, rolling in at number 10 is a devastating high-tech tragedy, the massive Massey Ferguson 3690. This advanced tractor confidently promised farmers the absolute future, with its highly advanced Datatronic digital management system. However, under brutally heavy draft dirt loads, it quickly became an incredibly expensive, self-cooking mechanical oven. When the highly primitive early computer sensors randomly failed, they completely botched the precise fuel injection timing and exact fuel delivery volume required by the engine. This was a completely fatal digital engine error. In a heavy-duty diesel, if a faulty computer aggressively overfuels the tight cylinders or advances the precise injection timing too far under a massive field load, exhaust gas temperatures instantly go straight through the heavy steel roof because the broken electrical sensors were constantly sending delayed or totally false digital data back to the main brain. The hardworking operator sitting comfortably in the cab had absolutely no idea. The massive engine was literally melting down internally until it was already far too late. The extreme, rapidly accumulating internal heat would literally permanently melt the heavy aluminum pistons right inside the cast iron block, before a single cheap plastic warning buzzer ever made a sound on the dashboard. It was a massive death, highly expensive, entirely caused by bad electrical data. It physically proved that adding complex digital computers to massive raw horsepower does not always equal success. The 3690 tragically destroyed itself because its own electronic brain commanded its mechanical heart to burn violently alive. And there you absolutely have it, folks. 10 truly incredible examples where massive heavy tractors literally became their own worst mechanical enemies. From boiling cracked blocks to violently twisting steel chassis. These heavy machines clearly prove that raw diesel power is absolutely nothing without a completely flawless engineering design. Which of these disastrous mechanical failures do you think is the absolute worst? Sound off in the comments below. Do not forget to aggressively smash that subscribe button for more heavy machinery content.